Hailing frequencies open and welcome aboard Treks and Tangents. I'm your co-host Brian.
And I'm your co-host Jaci. I'm the Star Trek newbie who treks off on tangents.
And I'm your Star Trek expert who is here to get the tangents back on track. Each episode we watch and talk about a different Star Trek episode, and this week we watched
Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 14, Wolf in the Fold.
Welcome back to the Star Trek episode with more holes in its plot.
And I knew you were going to talk about that.
Yeah, it's this is an interesting episode. 3 women stabbed to death, but still more holes in the plot than those stabbing victims. Before we get too far into it, don't forget to stick around to the end of the episode where we'll reveal our Star Note episode for this week. That's where we'll take 1 or 2 topics from the episode and do a deeper, more unstructured dive, and we'll post that bonus Star Note episode for free for everyone over at our Patreon, patreon.com/treksandtangents. And now we'll revisit the Turbolift tease and see how accurate Jaci was last week. That's where we gave Jaci the title of this week's episode, and Jaci, without any other information, tried to guess the plot of this week's episode. So, computer, what was Jaci's prediction last week?
Jaci's prediction last week was, the Enterprise is going to the galaxy doing their charting because they are on the edge, and suddenly they are able to see that there are distress signals coming from an area that they don't even know about. And so they go over to check it out, and they find out that once they bring it on the Enterprise, this person, or thing, is actually someone on the run, and they were hiding in this end of the galaxy trying to stay away until they got picked up by the Enterprise, being nice, and oops, now you have to go to jail.
So, Jaci, how accurate do you think your prediction was last week?
Well, first, I want to commend myself for using terms and actions that I've learned over this series. I didn't know all about this, so yeah, I got an F.
No, I mean, I do think it's funny that you said person or thing.
See, I'm learning.
Let's not make an assumption on their specific race, but I'll give you hit 1 point. Someone was technically kind of on the run.
Yes.
And they were okay until they got picked up by the Enterprise because they were laying low.
And it was a thing.
So, okay, couple points.
So a D.
Okay, I'll give you a D.
But A for effort?
Sure, A for effort every week.
Yay.
But let's jump into it, Jaci. Let's start talking about this. Let's talk about what are your first thoughts after watching the episode?
I was so confused. And there's a lot of things going on in this episode, and
yes,
it was nice to end the episode with everyone laughing.
Which is probably part of the episode that makes the least amount of sense.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I was going to ask you, because they're all like sedated, supposedly, but sedation to me means conked out.
Right, and so they're giving instead stimulants or just narcotics, and then it kind of makes that jumping straight to the end.
Sorry.
What are we going to do? They've got 6 hours before the dosage wears off. They're all high as a kite except for Spock and Kirk. And so they're all expected to run the ship while high?
Well, Spock did suggest that the crew go use Argelius for their resting period.
Right, but then they don't do that, and I think that's Kirk's most rational decision in the episode is like, no, we just barely got away from that planet intact. We're not going to send a bunch of stoned crew members back down to cause trouble.
I don't know. They're gonna play on the Enterprise. There's like a gym, right?
Yes, there is a gym on the Enterprise that we saw back in Charlie X for the one time that we see it. But in any case,
at least we're in the port.
Yeah.
and hunkered down.
I guess they're just going to stay in orbit for a couple hours. But breaking it down, starting with the interesting fact that the whole reason that they're down on this planet is because Scotty was the victim of an accident, and the accident was caused by an incompetent female crew member, which we don't see and we don't really get reference to in the episode.
I had to read the beta memory. No.
Memory Alpha.
Memory Alpha to figure out that his head, how he got the concussion, and that it was by a woman.
Right. And that somehow leads Scotty to instantly developing this huge detestment to women, an unprofessional detestment to women, because again, they're down on this planet and they went specifically to this planet because Kirk was like, well, if we give Scotty some good experiences with women, he'll start to like women again and he won't hate every female crew member. And I'm like, just from one accident? That doesn't sound like Scotty at all.
No, that was just maybe an excuse.
Maybe. But then it jumps, and then you go into the murder mystery, which is Jack the Ripper. And Jack the Ripper was really this
entity
that jumped from planet to planet. And
well, it went with man because it needed a ride. It was a parasite.
Right, that's a good way to put it, a parasite, and it went from host to host. But then that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it turns out that it came to Argelius II on Hengist, the little administrator guy from Risa.
A year ago from Rigel 4.
And it was in him, but then it's jumping to Scott? Or, like, how is that working?
I don't think it is jumping from person to person when it murders, because Scotty felt the thing in front of him when he finally was able to remember.
Yeah.
Because the other two, he was blacked out. So maybe then it was to, the first two were to check out if Scotty could do it. And then the third one was like, he's already gone, so I'll just be myself and kill this chick.
But so it's not jumping into Scotty, is it in the end?
I think it's being like Whoopi Goldberg and Demi Moore from Ghost.
This is not the turn I expected the episode to go, but okay. So it's an entity that can't, well, no, please explain this theory, because I think I'm going to stab some holes in it like a lieutenant.
Oh, that's what I presumed, because Scotty explained what he felt and what happened to him when the third woman was killed, because he's never holding the knife when it's in the woman. He is holding the knife after, and like a petrified look on his face, like he saw a ghost.
Okay, so your theory is that the evil entity always is in possession of Hengist, even though we know that it can possess other people, because obviously it's jumping from other people. You think that it's always, because it has to be possessing someone in order to interact with something. It doesn't take on its own form.
Correct.
Okay, so then who ultimately in your mind is the one physically holding the knife in each murder? Now this is going to be like Clue.
Okay, well, if we think back,
and this is a trick question because I don't think there's a real answer.
But it's good to think. But I think Mr. Hengist is the one doing it because he's actually the host for this entity, and no one knows where he is, where the other two women were murdered.
Right.
But he is like a weird, scary form that scares, because we learn later that this entity feeds on fear, so maybe it takes on a scary form, which is why Scotty looks so wildly terrified after each one.
Yeah.
But he can't remember.
So I think that's the easiest explanation, and we'll put it to the test in further detail when we get to each murder. But my question is then how does Scotty end up with this amnesia? Like, how is this entity able to kill the woman, cause Scotty to black out, give him the knife, and disappear. It's a big plot hole in my mind.
Fear does that.
So Scotty's just susceptible to the fear.
At this point, possibly yes, because it's helped. Fear plus the head injury is probably not helping with his memory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've talked about an extensive amount for initial theories. Why don't we get into it? Jackie, why don't you walk us through the episode, and we'll put some of these theories to the test as we walk our way through our own Jack the Ripper murder mystery episode.
So we are opening in a cafe where we have a lovely belly dancer playing the castanets. They're actual musical instruments. And instead of wearing clothes, she's wearing tinsel, but in different colors.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And so she's dancing. And after she's done dancing, Scotty is like pounding on a table. And then Kirk's trying to tell him, we applaud by using the lights.
Yeah, that's the local tradition on this planet. And Scotty's like, I don't care. Don't tell me how to clap for a beautiful woman.
You don't have to tell me how. So we keep going on, and it starts immediately with something creepy happening because she goes to their table to take a pillow, and this creepy man by their table is watching, and he gets up and he walks away weirdly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he pretty much is like glaring at them for giving them the evil eye, and then he gets up and leaves. And in amongst all of that, also one of the musicians is also like keeping an eye on her. So
yeah,
definitely gives this aura an early impression of like sinister people and bad doings going on.
But Scotty would love to go on a walk with her. So yay, they go outside to go on this lovely walk, and it's dark. And next thing we know, there's a scream.
Yes.
And we run out, and poor Tinsel Lady is dead, stabbed 12 times, we are told. And poor Scotty is against the wall, petrified, holding the knife.
And that's where we transition into the opening credits. Definitely. Well, fun opening to the episode. Okay, fine. There's the obvious gorgeous, beautiful woman for the audience, but also I think again they just kind of drop in this little tidbit of Scotty was in an accident, why he was in an accident. He now detests women. It's a huge far-fetched reason to just get there. I kind of like your headcanon that you mentioned of this just was Kirk's excuse to get to this planet.
Well, you can see that they're all smiling like a kid on their birthday with the cake.
Right. And it's doubly weird because it's not shore leave.
Right.
No one else from the Enterprise is taking shore leave or taking rest on the planet. It's specifically set up as a medical mission to treat Scotty's little condition and his opinion toward women. A little weird that you would divert the entire Enterprise and crew's resources to that when ultimately, I would like to think they would have just said, Scotty, you had one mishap with a female crew member who made a mistake. You need to get over it.
And you would think he would be at least the one to do that.
Right. Again, super against Scotty's character, I think.
Agreed. I mean, I can see McCoy being, grouchy about it, but none to the level that they're saying.
Right. So maybe less of Kirk's excuse to get to the planet and more of the excuse for the writers and developers of the show to get to the planet.
There you go. So after the musical break, then intro, this is where we learn we're on Argelius II. They didn't tell us earlier. And now Scotty is charged with the suspicion of murder. They don't have like a law enforcement on this planet because this planet is supposed to be peaceful and calm. But they do have like an admin officer who does the investigation, and he's Mr. I'm going to butcher his name every time.
We're going to continue the tradition of butchering names.
But it's Mr. Hengist, and he is this little dude with big blue eyes and no hair.
Right. And a super high voice. And I kind of liked that little toss in. And then we meet him, of course, and we're back in the tavern. And he's explaining that the Argelians are so unfocused in their way of life and carefree that they're not very productive when it comes to administrative matters and so forth. So, as a population, they hire these outsiders from other planets and other societies to come in and do that administration work and so forth. Again, I thought it was really kind of a cool concept, and I was like, well, how much power do they have and what's going to happen? But then we get Jaris, and we get this weird little power struggle where he's like, you're just the administrator, but I'm the leader.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you're the leader, and so you have a structure in society where you have leaders, but they're so lackluster in their focus and their skills that you delegate to these outside administrators.
So, and also at this time, when we meet Mr. Hengist, he mentions that his home planet would have a dozen inspectors on this, trying to like throw his weight around. And then he asks Scotty if he recognizes the knife.
Right. Yeah. Like, okay, this is your way of investigating. Like, hey, dude, do you recognize the murder weapon? And, okay, sure. I guess that's a valid question to get out of the way.
And of course, Scotty doesn't remember anything about the knife. And this is when Kirk and McCoy go to like a sidebar and they say, Scotty has a concussion. This might not be helpful at all. I mean, what are the laws here at Argelius? And then this is when Yaris appears and he says, the laws is love.
Right. And I was like, okay, who's in charge now?
And he says it with like a dozen beautiful ladies around him. And we learn that the title he carries is a prefect, which I don't know what it's equalizing to. I guess it'll just be like almost perfect.
Well, that's just a title that's given to a leader. I mean, we have them here on Earth and other cultures as well, so.
Okay, sounds good. So he and his half a dozen ladies explain that there is an Argelian empathic contact, and it is a gift that his wife has. And this little gift is over 200 years old. So she'll be able to tell who's telling the truth.
Right, because we're going to introduce this idea that this society is recent, within a couple centuries, and that they had a different type of societal structure, kind of like, I guess, the Vulcans, just a shorter timeline. So it's also in this scene that Hengist is mentioning that they only found Scotty's fingerprints on the knife, and that they're going to go track down the other people that were in the cafe with them and so forth. So first litmus test to how this whole murder can take place. If Hengist is holding the knife and doing the actual stabbing, obviously Scotty's fingerprints end up on the knife. So are we just supposed to take like a leap of faith, simple explanation that he wipes the knife clean and then shoves it in Scotty's hand?
Yes.
Okay. So still on the theory that Hengist leaps out of the shadows, stabbed the belly dancer to death. Scotty is overwhelmed with whatever fearful aura that is put forth from this entity, freaks out, maybe susceptible by the concussion, and after the woman is dead and as Scotty is freaking out in the doorway, wipes the knife clean, shoves it in his hand, and runs away.
I like that.
Okay, let's see how well that holds up in a little bit.
And so his wife, her name is Saibo, she has to go meditate before she does this special thing. And so while she's off meditating,
we should say they've transitioned from the cafe to Jaris's house at his invitation.
Kirk also offers that he can bring down a device called a psycho recorder and it will record everything that has happened to Scotty in the last 24 hours, like subconscious and conscious.
Right, which fantastic idea, Kirk. I have no idea why they don't follow through with this immediately after when the first attempt that we learn about first fails, because this seems like it would be far more accurate to this seance that they're going to do. And it also seems like there's no pushback or anything because they've already said, yeah, go ahead, do it. We'll take that into consideration with all the other evidence. So it seems like it takes way too long to get around to that.
And of course, Hinges, pops in and says everything has to be done in a special manner. But again, more manly man, Jarvis, says he's the highest man of law. So what he says, go. So yes, Kirk, send the coordinates to Spock, and then we will prepare for our seance. So we have like a break, and then we come back, and Jarvis is pouring everyone a drink, saying that his people are so very concerned. They're talking about closing down everything and no longer allowing other vehicles to use their ports. And that's when I learned about the spaceport, that this is a very special planet, not only for fancy tinsel dancers.
Well, yeah, it's just an important spaceport in the sense that it happens to be the only spaceport in that general area.
And so we have Lieutenant Karen Tracy beaming down from the Enterprise with the psycho recorder. And she and Scotty are shown to a room on, to the side of this beautiful room that they're already in.
So when they say, yeah, there's a little room to the side, do you imagine it's just another room? Did you imagine it's the basement?
No, I thought it would be like a bedroom.
Yeah, weird.
No, it was like, here's my dungeon.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, go record down in this dank basement dungeon.
Yeah, because, their big room is beautiful. And you don't notice that the fire that they have is for the seance until they move the camera over just a bit more.
Right.
It's like mine, like, woo. So Scotty and Lieutenant Tracy go to the dungeon to start their process. And then McCoy and Kirk discuss that in normal situations, Scotty would never be in this situation. But then that's awkward because no one should be in this situation. And then we hear a scream when we all have to run down to the dungeon, and Lieutenant Tracy is stabbed with a dozen knife wounds again, and Scotty's out cold.
Right. And again, the knife is in his hand because before we hear the scream, we have a little scene where Jarvis's wife asks to inspect the murder weapon to prepare for her little psychic seance thing, and they can't find the knife. And everyone's concerned, and they're like, well, wait a minute, I brought it in, I put it down, blah, blah, blah. I went back and I rewound it to try to track the knife, and you don't ever see the knife. If you go all the way back to the cafe, when they're leaving to go to Jarvis's house, Hengist still has the knife. Then they get to the manor, and you see Jarvis walk in with Kirk. Jarvis is not holding the knife. At no point in the scene is the knife anywhere near that little fire altar. You never see it. So it's weird that he would make the comment of, well, I thought I put the knife here down when I got here, and now it's missing. Even if that's true, we have to assume, based on, again, we're going to break down the theory of the murder, as Hengist leaves, because Hengist leaves to go round up more of the people at the cafe,
yeah,
we have to assume that he either had the dagger the whole time or he grabbed the dagger on his way out. Yeah?
Yeah, yes, because I was like, I can't see the knife.
Okay. So Hengist has the knife, and according to your theory then, because they want to figure out, well, can anyone else get into that room, basement, dungeon?
Yeah.
And Jarvis says, well, there's a door that leads out to the garden, but it's been locked forever. And they investigate it and they say, oh, well, I'm sorry, we can't tell. It either could have been opened and the lock could have been picked, or it could not have. So your theory is Hengist leaves with the knife.
Yes.
Runs around through the garden to the door, picks the lock, goes inside, and then stabs the lieutenant, gets Scotty to freak out again, and then leaves the knife and runs away again?
Well, as we learn this later, this entity is like gas-like. So I'm going to presume he can jump out of Hengist after he's unlocked or locked it, but he can slip through the door in his gas state, be a part of Scotty somehow, and then stab Lieutenant Tracy, and then run away back to Hengist, leaving Scotty knocked out.
So the MO changes, because in the first murder, you're saying Hengist jumped out of the shadows and killed the belly dancer. And in this, Hengist couldn't get into the room because he couldn't get through the locked door. So then the entity leaves Hengist, goes into the basement, and possesses Scotty.
Well, it might be the same MO. We just don't know from the beginning because no one's there.
True. The only hole that I'll put in that is because I like to think that that's what happens, is that this thing is jumping. It makes more sense and is a cleaner story in my mind, is that this entity jumps into Scotty from Hengist, commits the murder, and then gets back into Hengist. But we'll get to that plot hole later, and we'll jump back to the murder mystery unfolding. And now we're again back upstairs in the large room in Jacis's house. They've questioned Scotty several times again, and we're still in that roundabout kind of way of, well, Scotty has a concussion. Maybe he doesn't remember doing the murders, but he's actually doing it. And important to note, Hengist is definitely like pushing that narrative of like, hey, maybe Scotty is doing the murdering and not remembering it. Maybe Scotty's lying about not remembering. But in any case, Hengist is definitely putting the pressure on Kirk to believe the narrative that Scotty is the murderer. Motive aside.
Exactly. And then when he brings those people who were at the cafe, we learn one of them was her father. How sad.
How sad. And he gives, so we have the father, and we have
her fiance.
Ex-fiance, it's not really clear. Stalker, spurred lover, whatever. Maybe they were engaged. And again, maybe this is a society that monogamy is not necessarily the most popular choice in relationships, and he's just jealous. But yeah, they bring them back. First thought, there was a hell of a lot more people in the cafe that they didn't bring to provide testimony.
Like 3 tables.
Yeah, and multiple musicians, but they just happened to bring the 2 people with the most connection to the belly dancer. Her name's Kara, by the way.
Oh yeah, we learned that finally.
Yeah, we learned that finally. And okay, convenient because they don't know it. They have to like drag it out of them of, what is your relationship? How are you familiar? I guess it's also relevant because I guess they were the 2 people that left before Scotty and Kara. Fine. But we also get the most cringeworthy quote from the father where he says, since she was a little girl, she danced for me.
I knew you were going to say that.
She was my daughter. And I was just like, phrasing writers, come on. There's a better way to write that.
And Kirk is super unhappy with the lack of urgency Hengist is using. Like he doesn't want it to be anybody but Scotty.
Right. And wants to jump to that conclusion without making it seem like he jumps to that conclusion. And Hengist also is not really pushing any further investigation. Doesn't want to do the séance. Doesn't really want to follow through on that psycho reader from the Enterprise and so forth.
And then we also have the other side that Jaci is asking Kirk, would you do this for anyone? Meaning trying to prove their innocence as much as you are, or are you fighting this much because you want to keep our ports, continue to be friendly with our ports and whatnot?
Right. Are you are you trying to drag out this investigation and you're trying to do all of this because you're trying to save your friend and potentially ignoring your diplomatic mission to keep these starports open and so forth? And so questioning Kirk's motive.
Cybo is now ready to perform her empath gift. And then Scotty is like freaking out, saying, like, is my life going to be judged using this mumbo jumbo?
Right. And so while they all gather around this little fire altar of truth, whatever you want to call it, Kirk gets a message from Spock and kind of jumps away for half a second. And Spock is communicating down to Kirk that he's researched this ritual, for lack of a better term. And he's like, yeah, it's a legitimate thing. She's not making it up, but it's not super reliable. And the examination on the Enterprise, the psycho examination, the tricorder, and all of that, into Scotty's memory would be a more accurate way of doing it. And Kirk's like, well, they're a proud people and we have to respect their traditions. And I'm like, why? Jarvis just said he would be fine with the lieutenant coming down and doing the analysis and comparing that evidence.
So you would assume he'd be okay with everyone going up to the Enterprise for more
exactly
checking out.
Why can't you just tell Jarvis in that moment, like, well, this didn't work. Hey, let's do the little mumbo jumbo ceremony, but you've promised to be impartial and allow us to conduct the, assist in the investigation and so forth. And Hengist is in the corner going, no, Scotty's guilty, kill him. But Jarvis would absolutely, I believe, because he agreed before and agrees later, to just be like, you're right, all evidence must be considered. Let's do my wife's mumbo jumbo parlor trick, and then we'll go up to the Enterprise to do your investigation. Anyway, again, no sense.
And then Kirk's like, this room needs to be sealed. And all the entryways, their doors like slide out, and they're startled. They have these sliding doors on the Enterprise.
Right, yeah.
That totally, I was like, hello, these are the same.
I mean, it is kind of funny because he's like, I suggest and I insist that the room is sealed. And then Jarvis doesn't say anything. He just starts flipping switches. And he's like, it has been sealed. Love is the law, and love will be confined.
Oh, man. It was just fun. So the group gathers around the fire, and so Cybo has been playing with it all this time. Well, everything else that's been going on, she's just standing there, like wringing her hands above it.
Yeah.
So they all have to like hold hands, and she begins to start to do kind of like just humming and chanting, and then now she's starting to use words. And she says that there is a monstrous evil that is present. This evil hates the living. It hates women and has a hunger.
Right.
It's just very, obviously this evil entity is very evil and wants to kill things. And then she calls out a name. I'm going to kill it. Baratis Kesla Rejek.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate pronunciation of these. Two of them are made up. I'm also 99. I'm going to go out on a limb, post in the comment if I'm wrong. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Red Jack is not an accurate nickname for Jack the Ripper.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know. Hold on. Let me just find out. Yeah, confirmed right here that Red Jack is a fictional name for Jack the Ripper, only appearing in this episode of Star Trek, which makes sense because if it was a more popular nickname or synonym for Jack the Ripper, I think as an audience, we would hear that name and it would spoil pretty much the rest of the episode.
Agreed.
So, but also kind of weird that you would invent a name to tie it in. Fine.
Well, two other names too.
Yeah. Well, I think the two other names make sense because it's describing a series of stabbings on other planets and so forth. I think they could have just left out the whole Red Jack kind of thing, and I think you could have drawn a new parallel to the stabbings and found, I think you could have just had Spock in the computer later in the little examination on the Enterprise compute all the facts of all of these other instances on other planets of these stabbings of women. And I think Spock could have just simply asked the question, name other similar examples of mass murders. And I think the computer could have spit out a couple more fictitious examples. And then the computer could have then just said, Jack the Ripper.
But
and
that would be too easy.
And you could have just gotten rid of Red Jack altogether.
But then we have another horrible scream and the lights come back on. Sorry, they were turned off first.
Right.
Then we had a horrible scream and the lights are back on.
Yes.
And Scotty is holding Cybo again with another horrified look, and he drops her over McCoy and she has a knife in her back.
Right. And it's the same knife that has been used in the past 2 murders. Okay. So now explain this, Jaci. Third murder. Let's ignore the fact that there's no plausible way that the lights could be turned off and turned back on. That's just kind of weird. I think that it would have been more fun if they had dimmed the lights, had the fire going, and then the fire was extinguished, and that's what caused the blackout. But in any case, who holds the knife that kills Cybo? And the reason why I'm asking the question is we've got the overhead shot of all of the people in the room sitting around the little altar flame thingamajiggy. No knife.
No, and you got me stumped because I had a perfect answer for you.
And looking at, and they're all holding hands like a seance.
Yes.
And so this is the layout when the lights are dimmed, Cybo screams, the lights come back up. Scotty, we're really breaking this down like the end of Clue here. Scotty comes forward around to his left to catch Cybo because she screams.
Yes.
And that's where he mentions, we find out in a little bit, that he has some memory and he went and it wasn't something, he felt like some resistance and there was like an entity present and so forth.
Yes.
And it, smelled like a butcher shop, blah, blah, blah. And it prevented him from reaching her at first, blah, blah, blah. So, but to get to her, he's got to go through Kara's fiance.
Yeah, like crawling over. This is wild.
Hengist is like almost all the way across the table from Cybo. And no one, not Kara's dad and not Jaris would be the first to speak up, say that
he goes limp or something.
He goes limp because we find out later. But anyway, so the entity leaves Hengist and possesses Scotty, but now Scotty has the mental fortitude to remember.
He would not possess Scotty in that way. He'd be more in front of him when the knife is in his lap.
The knife is not in Scotty's lap. That's just some random thing.
Oh, just kidding.
But so I propose, wouldn't it be funnier if the entity leaves Hengist and jumps across and possesses Kara's fiance? And the reason why Scotty, because again, then Scotty has to push his way forward to get to Cybo, but he's encountering the entity either entering or leaving Kara's fiance.
Ooh, I like that. I'm sorry for Cybo being killed, but...
Yeah, but I think that is the explanation. And so, again, it leads to, and I propose that because it leads to my overall conclusion that Hengist is never holding a knife when he kills someone. The entity is leaving Hengist, possessing someone else, Scotty for the first 2 murders, and Kara's fiance for the 3rd murder, and then returning to Hengist at the end. And it's real quick.
So we are for sure that the entity is in Hengist.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler, yes, Hengist has the entity. And we know why in just a little bit. So in any case, we've lost the opportunity to do this psycho tricorder examination from the Enterprise in the basement. We've lost the opportunity for Cybo to perform her mumbo-jumbo seance to get the truth. And so Jaris agrees with Kirk and says, fine, let's go to the Enterprise and let's use your instruments to investigate the truth.
And Kirk promises him there will be no doubt about the truth, no doubt.
Right.
So we are in the briefing room again, and they've set up a chair that's like a polygraph machine. The person testifying just puts their hand on, we'll call it a plate, and everything will be trickling into a computer that's set up to say yes or no, that you said that right.
Right. It's a glorified polygraph machine, which disappointing because Kirk has set up and explained it away as a high-tech device that would be able to scan Scotty's memories for the last 24 hours and extrapolate all this. So when they got up there and they were explaining it, I'm like, this is literally just a lie detector. This is not what Kirk promised. But this is also the longest scene in the episode. So let's jump through it real quick just for time. They put Scotty up on the chair and...
Question really quick. They make sure to tell us that McCoys input all of Scotty's health records and information in. Do they put everyone's records in, or is it just because Scotty is the accused?
I think it's just because Scotty's the accused and they have access to it. I don't think they take the time to investigate Morla, his health, Kara's dad's health, Hengist's health, because why would they? They don't suspect him at this point. So it's just Scotty.
And the knife is being examined in another room.
Right. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But in any case, again, we get the questions to Scotty. We've gone over all of them. Scotty felt the circle of hands break when the lights went out, heard Cybo scream, jumped up, had that invisible force field that smelled like a butcher shop, and then he catches Cybo, the lights come back on, and, oh, Scotty, you rascal, you killed another one. So, but in any case, the lie detector proves that Scotty literally does not remember any of it. And again, it still kind of leaves it open-ended. Did Scotty actually do it and he just doesn't remember doing it? But in any case, we jump to Morla, who would be the next likely suspect, who is jealous of Kara's attention to Scotty, and he provides the story that he was so jealous he just got up and he left, and he just walked home and he went home. And again, we're satisfied with his answers that they are true and accurate, so he's not the murderer. And then we just abandoned the whole lie detector test in general because we start talking about and analyzing what Cybo's last words were before she was stabbed to death.
And Kirk also brings up the stupid psycho tricorder. If they would have done it, wouldn't they have done it already?
Right. Why can't we do that? So, but in any case...
Yes, now we're talking about what she said.
Right, and they go through and they analyze those words, and we get this long, prolonged search through the computer, and then we come to the conclusion that those 3 proper names that she gave were assigned as names and identities to unsolved murders throughout history on other planets.
Of mass women.
Right, stabbing of women, all the way back to Red Jack, which apparently is another name for Jack the Ripper, but whatever. Most importantly, the most recent event and one of the unidentified killers was less than a year ago and took place on Rigel 4, which is exactly where Hengist came from. And we do a quick breakdown of the knife because, hey, let's just decide to examine the knife at this point. And, oh, what do you know? It's a knife with carvings and manufacturing that ties it directly, again, to Rigel 4.
So Kirk invites Hengist to go on the chair.
Because all evidence points to him now.
Yes, and he refuses. Like, well, I thought you didn't have anything to hide. And then he tries to run out of the room, but we get into a little scuffle. And it was like the fastest fight ever. With one hit, Kirk kills him.
Yeah. So we get into a fight between everyone in the room and the stunt double for the actor for Hengist. But it is quick. I like it. It's well choreographed. It's kind of cool. But yeah, it ends with Kirk punching Hengist, which knocks him to the ground, and then McCoy checks and he's dead.
And they're like, that can't be. And then next we have this horrible sounding screaming of like, kill, kill, kill. You're going to die. Just, they're trying to make everybody afraid because that's what it like feeds on. And it's actually coming from the computer.
Right.
And the computer controls the ship.
Right. So it's implied, or it shows, that this evil entity has left Hengist's body and is now inside the computer. Weird that we don't get some kind of effect to show the entity leaving Hengist and going into the computer. But maybe that works to the advantage of explaining how this entity is allowed to jump around without being noticed and killing people.
That is true.
It would have been nice if we had one of the characters make mention of smelling that butcher shop smell like Scotty smelled when Cybo died, but regardless. But this leads to the hole in my theory. I don't think Hengist died in that moment. I think Hengist has been dead for a while.
So he's like a zombie.
In a sense, and the entity in possessing his body has, when it left to go into the computer, it just abandoned, and so he's dead, because we're going to see it reverse and it's going to go back into his body later, which is what tells me. But if that's the case, then we have to then assume for the other murders, when the entity leaves Hengist's body, the body just collapses because he's dead. And so he has to do it in a way. So the entity has to take the extra step to make sure whenever it leaves its host body to infect and take over Scotty or Morla, in my example, for the third murder, that Hengist's body won't be discovered in that brief period of time.
Well, that's why it was really dark, the first one with Kara.
I guess.
It was in the shadows.
And I guess you can, and you could have him do it right outside in the garden for the murder of the lieutenant in the basement of Jarrus's house. Fine. And then in the third murder, the body could just go limp, and people are going to let go of the body anyway, and it can go undiscovered. So I guess maybe that works. It's not really a hole, but it just has to be explained away. So, but then we get into Act 4.
The fun.
Let's really jump the space shark on this.
And Kirk is telling his crew to stay at their post and stay calm.
Right, because again, another little plot injection is the fact that not only does this entity feed off of killing women, but it really feeds off of that fearful emotion and causing the fear in people around them. So the theory is it can kill the crew at any time, but it won't do so until after it sufficiently feeds off of their fear. So by keeping everyone calm, it's not going to have anything to feed off of, and it can't kill them yet.
Right. And if it kills them, he kills himself. Oh, well. And so Kirk asks McCoy if he has any sedatives. And McCoy is like, I have enough for a volcano. And I didn't understand why they needed that until later.
Right.
Because they don't show anything.
Well, it's the most absurd plot point, because again, we're going to give sedatives to everyone, but it's not going to sedate them. It's going to just make them goofy. So it's more of a narcotic than a sedative. And we're going to do it to the whole ship, and we're going to administer this drug to 400 people within 10 minutes, it seems like.
Yeah, and Sulu was the first one that I saw it happen to, and I was like, why is he acting like that?
Right. Again, I think it's just a way for the writers to kind of have this goofy, funny moment to tie up the episode. It's not needed.
So while McCoy is shooting everyone up, Kirk and Spock are working up. They're trying to think of a mathematical problem that can't be solved for the computer to work on as like top priority.
as a way to distract the evil entity or block the evil entity from accessing systems and giving them an opportunity to turn over the systems to manual control away from the entity's control.
Totally, because the computer's working on something, it's not going to change course. So Spock asks the computer to find the last digit of pi, and he inputs that. The bridge is all sedated, and Sulu is like, oh, this guy talks so gloomy, his twirling self. And they all go, and then Kirk and Spock go back to the briefing room to meet up with everyone there because no one left.
Right. And I think the explanation they give is because Jarrus would be like the last one to be sedated or something. Because again, they know that by jamming up the computer with the impossible problem of pi, the last digit of pi, that the entity is going to leave the computer and try to re-enter someone's body. They don't know yet that it can re-enter its original host, Hengist. So they narrow it down to, well, the last people to be sedated are going to be the people in the conference room.
Yes. And that comes up to be McCoy and our friend Jarrus. And then Kirk has to order McCoy to give himself a shot.
Right. At first he's like, all right, I guess it's time for you to inject up McCoy. And McCoy's like, I think I should stay sharp. I think I should pass. Of course, giving the moment of, it's McCoy. But the whole time, Jarrus is standing there with his back to the camera.
Yeah, staying like away from everyone.
Yeah. And so, of course, Kirk goes, no, really, McCoy, do it. And then McCoy's like, okay.
And then he chuckles.
Yeah, he's like, I won't be a narc. I'll take the drug.
So now it's Jarrus' turn. And when Kirk asks for his arm, Jarrus is now yelling the die, die, kill, kill, terror, all the words.
Yes. And so they managed to sedate Jarrus.
Thanks to Spock's little Vulcan grip.
Right. And the entity jumps back into Hengist's dead body, which he immediately jumps up, grabs the knife that's in the conference room for some reason, and holds the little stenographer yeoman hostage. I don't even know if she's sedated at this point.
Oh, she's laughing up a storm while he has the knife to her neck.
So then they must do that. But in any case, there's a struggle. They end up sedating, injecting the drug into Hengist, which now, I guess, traps the evil entity into Hengist.
That's what I presumed.
I guess because it makes you wonder, because at this point, there's still two people left not quote-unquote sedated, drugged, Spock and Kirk.
True.
And everyone doesn't want to sedate Spock because Spock can control his emotions, but the thing makes no effort to jump into Kirk.
Yeah.
So the drug must trap the entity in Hengist's body. They rush it over to the transporter. Since Hengist, the person, is dead, they don't have any qualms in just beaming the body with the entity trapped into it out into space. I guess they talk about how they don't rematerialize it. They just beam all of his little data bits into deep space, and that way it can't come back together.
They use the word maximum dispersion.
Right. So they basically break it up, send it all out there, and now the entity is dead.
And our man Kyle's like, I would have gotten round to it, just because Spock pushed him out of the way to send him out.
Yes. Of note, Kyle, who famously died last episode in Obsession, he was one of the 6 people that got all the blood cells taken out. So, okay.
He's very popular. He comes back all the time.
Yeah. So welcome back, Kyle. Appreciate it. But then, yeah, we just kind of end on this weird little scene where they're like, oh, let's go back down to the planet. And, Kirk's trying. First, Kirk tries to convince Spock to go down to the planet since we're here.
Because
the women. And Spock's like, glaring at Kirk like, you know better. And then Kirk's like, come on, Spock, I know this great place. And Scotty's like, I know the place. a throwback to the first scene.
Yes.
And Kirk's like, absolutely not. You guys are stoned out of your mind. You guys are drugged up. We're not getting into any other trouble. And Kirk's like, and I don't want to go down alone. So they just all kind of wander back out into the hallway.
Yeah, it was weird. He stood in the doorway and just was like, come on.
Yeah, like, oh, I guess Spock and I are trapped on this ship full of drugged up people for the next 6 hours. Like, how can you even consider beaming down to the planet with Spock to go on holiday, leaving literally everyone on the ship drugged up, running around? We've had that episode where they all got drunk on the heavy water and it was a problem. So, what the hell, Kirk? Terrible plan. As bad of a plan as it was to flush the air vents with radioactive waste last episode.
Well, he does admit not much work would be done.
Yeah. But that's going to be the end of it. Roll credits. So, Jaci, what did you think about season 2, episode 14, Wolf in the Fold?
I felt like I was on like a mental, like circus act. Like everything was happening, but no real answer was being given.
Right.
I mean, it was interesting.
I kind of feel like this episode is like the movie Clue, starring Tim Curry. Fantastic movie. Everyone should go watch it. Where you have this murder mystery and nothing is really being revealed in the plot as you go. As you watch you never get led along the way. This isn't an episode where as a viewer you instantly go, it's Hengist. And then you spend the rest of the episode watching the other characters come to the same conclusion. You go through the mystery as much as the characters on screen, but it doesn't have that satisfying payoff at the end like Clue does, where
Right.
it ties everything back up. It just kind of throws this random thing out at the end where it's like, it's Jack the Ripper. And we get this chaotic fourth act where we just watch everyone get drugged up and we go through the special effects and the funny voice changer for the actor, and it just wraps up.
In a very awkward way.
In a super awkward way. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's just way too many plot points. It's like they introduce all these plot points and then they just poke holes in all the plot points, like I said in the beginning. And it just leaves you at the end kind of going, what the hell did I just watch? So,
well, it's setting us up for the next one.
Yes.
Do-do-do.
So as mentioned, don't forget to pop over to our Patreon when you're done listening to this episode to catch our Star Note bonus episode, or we'll take a deeper dive into one main topic and whatever else we feel like in a more fun, non-structured dive into the episode. This week's Star Note topic is going to be when Starfleet personnel are accused of crimes on another world, whose laws should take priority?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and it kind of takes us away from some of the other ridiculous questions. We'll jump in. I've got some other questions to bring up that we haven't really dived into.
You said we were supposed to have fun in our Star Notes.
We do. So again, pop over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Treks and Tangents. Our bonus Star Note episodes are free for everyone who follows our Patreon. So we'll see you over there at the end of this episode. Jaci, to round out our final impressions, what is your favorite quote from the episode?
They were all good ones, but I decided on, in a strict scientific sense, Doctor, we all feed on death, even vegetarians. And that is Spock talking to McCoy when they're discussing Red Jack feeding on death. And then, that's what happens. Everyone eats dead things. Huh.
Okay. Well, my favorite quote is going to be it's going to be when Jaci is introduced in the episode.
Ooh.
Captain Kirk says, what is the law in these cases? And he's asking Hengist. But then Jaci appears and he says, the law of Argelius is love. And so I like it because Jaci kind of reminded me, and I wish they had leaned more into it. He's a prefect. He's a local leader of his people. But it would have been more fun instead of a leader, he was a respected or influential religious person tied to his wife having these mystic powers. And he certainly put on this air about it. He immediately reminded me of Aleister Crowley. Jaci doesn't know Aleister Crowley. too much. He's trying to think, but
With a name.
that is a deeper dive than we will get into. But his quote, "The law of Argelius is love," and the way he portrays himself as this, in my mind, as a kind of offshoot of Crowley, reminded me of Crowley's quote, which is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt." So again, it just is, when he says it, it just, and his presence in that moment just reminds me of Crowley and the tie to that quote. That's why it's going to be my favorite quote for the episode. So a far deeper dive and deeper topic than we have time to get into, Mr. Aleister Crowley. Maybe a bonus episode at some point. Certainly a controversial episode that would be. So, but I do have some triple tidbits or interesting facts to the episode. And Jackie, why do we call them triple tidbits?
Because they're the best.
Because sometimes triples are fun, cute, adorable, interesting, terrifying, problematic, and so forth, just like facts to Star Trek. So first airing December 22nd, 1967. This is the same release date as the movie The Graduate with Dennis Hoffman. Have you seen The Graduate?
I think so.
It's a different vibe, but thought I'd throw it out there. The show originally had a bit that when McCoy, Scotty, and Kirk were all in the cafe, bar, tavern at the beginning of the episode, that they would all be consuming drinks that had different colors layered in the drink, and every time they drank a new color, their mood would change. It's kind of a bit that got dropped, but it was severely pushed back by the network censors because they didn't want to give the appearance that the characters on screen were partaking in recreational drugs. And the producers and the writers pushed back, that were basically like, they're not taking drugs, they're drinking an alien cocktail that is affecting their mood. But regardless, they dropped it, not because of the censors, but because it was too difficult of effect to do on screen with the color change and the drinks and so forth. Also kind of stupid because at the end of the episode, you have every member of the Enterprise getting high.
I was just going to say, they allow dosing, though.
And apparently that didn't affect the network censors whatsoever. Also interesting of note, it was around this time that Leonard Nimoy earned an Emmy for his portrayal of Spock on screen, which absolutely ticked off William Shatner because of his ego. This episode was partially made as a conscious effort by the developers and producers of the show to give Spock a sideline role in an episode and to put Kirk in the forefront of the episode to try to placate and keep Shatner happy.
That is so sad.
And of course, again, Shatner and Nimoy had made up after, during the show. Everything was fine.
Oh, they're friends?
They were for a long number of years. But yeah, this is the start of some contention during the filming of the original series where Kirk feels like the show is starting to get away from him and Leonard Nimoy is becoming the star of the show, and Shatner doesn't like that. So this is kind of one of the first moments of that example. The belly dancer character Kara originally had makeup and effects that included colored feathers that covered much of her face. That was scrapped because the director didn't like it. There literally like 4 days of makeup testing where every day she would come back and they would show the director concept with her covered in feathers. He's like, too much feathers, take off the feathers. And then finally on like the 4th day, she just showed up in no makeup and he's like, yep, that's what we needed. Thank you. So she also did all of her own choreograph work for the belly dance scene.
I was going to ask because she dances and looks like she's a belly dancer.
Yes, so she did all of that herself, and then her and James Doohan, who's the actor who plays Scotty, dated a few times after the episode was over.
He kills her and then he brings her back to life.
Yes. The lie detector scene that we jumped through because it's just so long, I mentioned, is literally the longest continuous scene in the entire original series. It takes about 15 and a half minutes to get through. So it is the longest scene in any of those original episodes. This episode's also the first time it's established that Scotty's first name is Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
Lieutenant Karen Tracy, who is the science officer who beams down to do the examination, the second murder victim, is only one of 2 female blue shirts who die in the original series. We've already seen the first death. Who was it? It was Lieutenant Galway.
Oh, yes. I forgot she was in a blue. I was distracted by her tiny self.
Yeah, the little toy woman, as you described her.
Yes.
So she's the other one.
So they killed them one after the other.
And that's it. John Fieldler, who is the actor who plays Hengist, is best remembered as either Mr. Peterson on the Bob Newhart show, or he also played the voice of Piglet in some of the Winnie the Pooh animated cartoons from this series. So completely different roles to what we see on screen here in Star Trek, but he had commented many times that his role in Star Trek is the one he gets asked about the most. So,
well, that makes sense.
The belly dance music that was played at the beginning is the same music as from the failed pilot, The Cage, with Vina. Jaci noticed that. She's nodding. Interesting enough, early in Star Trek, The Cage and some of those earlier, The Man Trap and so forth, the music composer was a man named Alexander Courage. He withdrew from the show only a couple episodes in because of a falling out with Gene Roddenberry. In and amongst all of his musical score writing for the show, he also wrote the original opening credits theme. Roddenberry decided to write lyrics to the opening credits music, which effectively gave Roddenberry half of the royalty rights to the music. So he got royalties, half the royalties every time it was used. And Alexander Courage did not know that going into it. And so he was quite upset. And so he left the show.
Oh, that's what made him leave. I thought Roddenberry did it afterwards as like a jab.
No. And those lyrics never get used. We never see them in the show. But the way, and again, I'm not a music contract expert, but the way I read it was Alexander Courage, as his contract with Star Trek, it was written into the fine print that you get 100% of the royalties unless lyrics are added to the music, at which point whoever writes the lyrics gets half the royalties. Well, he just assumed that no one was going to write lyrics, and Roddenberry said, well, I'll just write some stupid lyrics, and they are terrible lyrics. You can look them up. But they never get used, and Roddenberry has fully admitted, I didn't write them to get used. I literally wrote them so that I could get half of the royalties for the music. So,
whoa,
justified in leaving, in my opinion, but depending on what resource you look to, some people say that they made up toward the end of their lives. Some people say that they never fixed that rift between them. So who knows? But
that's probably what the lady is singing in her own little voice that I don't like.
Yes. And I mentioned that little triple tidbit because this is going to be one of the episodes this late into the original series where we get music from Alexander Courage used. After he left, most of that music stopped being used and new composers and new music was used. So, but those are going to be your triple tidbits. And of course, this is where we're going to share our episode ranking, where we pretend the episode is a member of our fictitious starship crew and we assign a Starfleet rank to the episode. A higher rank not only means we were more entertained by the episode when we watched it, but we find the episode to be a more valuable member of our starship crew. And a lower rank, of course, means the opposite. We weren't as entertained and we find the episode to be a more disposable member of our crew. Our ranking starts at the very bottom. We can have an unlimited number of ensigns, lieutenant junior grades, and lieutenants. And then we get into the top of the ranking where we can have 7 lieutenant commanders, 5 commanders, 1 captain, and 1 admiral, or perfect episode. If none of that makes any sense, don't worry. Jump over to our Patreon where we have a graphical representation of all the episodes up to this point, as well as last season of the original series. We can promote episodes as needed. We can demote episodes as needed. So go check it out, follow along, see where the episodes rank as we go along.
And what they would choose.
And make sure, comment in the episode description in the comments, what rank would you assign this episode? But Jaci, for your starship, the USS Luminara, what rank do you assign this episode?
Admiral. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, that's a bold choice considering what episode's coming next.
I kid. It's going down in the ensign.
All the way to the bottom of the ensign?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Well, they made my Scotty a murderer or accused murderer, and like there was like 8 stories going on at the same time, so it just needs to stay down there with the other ensigns.
Okay, so we've got also ranked ensign by Jaci is the Changeling, the Apple, and Friday's Child. For my rank for the USS Comet, see, I remembered to give my starship name this time.
Yes.
I'm going to go one above. I'm going to go Lieutenant Junior grade.
You always go one above me.
Well, I've always got... No, that's not true. We have literally the same ensign rankings except this one. So I'm going to put this down in Lieutenant Junior grade. Scotty's acting, James Doohan's acting is fantastic in the episode. It's a fun episode where we get to see some of that on the screen. I also liked the idea of a murder mystery in Star Trek. That's kind of fun. That's it. It's fun to kind of follow along and follow it in real time. Kind of like I mentioned, Clue, the movie, where we're sitting there trying to piece together on a much smaller macro scale for sure the movements of everyone, where the murder weapon is, and so forth. But that's going to be pretty much all that's entertaining about the episode. Like you said, there's far too many plot points that are interjected. The fourth act is just thrown together. All the plot holes that fall into this. It's like they took, like you said, 8 different plots or stories, threw it into a blender, and then just kind of pulled pieces out and decided to fit it all together. So, not the worst episode that I've seen, not the least entertained I've been, but I'll watch it once, and then if I'm doing a watch through, this is probably going to be an episode that I would skip. Not a guarantee, but I would probably seriously consider skipping it if I saw it come up on the next up. So,
same.
Again, if none of that made any sense, patreon.com/treks and tangents, where we will post our graphical representation showing where everything lays as far as rankings so far this season.
It looks like Tetris.
Over on IMDb, because that's kind of our litmus test as to what the rankings are. Jaci, what do you think the rank is for this episode on IMDb?
I'm going to cross my fingers and hope they also chose 6.
Okay, this one's going to rank 7.2 out of 10, which is identical to last week's episode, Obsession. So I think people really like the murder mystery and they like the goofiness.
Yeah, I mean, I can see all of that.
And I think there's a lot of original series fans that kind of dismiss a lot of the Star Trek structure and allow the show to kind of break some of those rules. Because again, we're a season and a half into a sci-fi show that's still probably trying to find its feet. It's constantly on the verge of being canceled. And while it's the foundation of what Star Trek is to become, it's not what I think most people think of Star Trek. So I think a lot of people are able to forgive a lot of the episodes and go, it's the original series, it's okay. For me, coming at it from the golden age of Star Trek, The Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, I just view it as, okay, it's fun, but it could be better.
And I'm just watching it.
But that's going to be our rankings. We'll be back next week to trek through another episode, and before we go, we'll give our turbo lift tease or elevator pitch to next week's plot. That's where I'll give Jaci the title of next week's episode, and Jaci, without any other information, is going to try to guess the plot of the episode. Jaci, get excited. Next week's episode is entitled The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yay! I'm so excited. We're going to finally meet Tribbles, and since you talk so lovely about them, they're going to be all over, and then sadly, there are going to be so much of them. We have to calm the millions of them down, and so we do have to cull the sad ones. But otherwise, they're going to be so cute and cuddly, and we're going to find homes for them.
And tune in next week to see if Jaci's prediction is correct.
Of course it will be.
If you want more show information, you can find and directly support our podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/Treks and Tangents. As I mentioned, we'll post graphical representations of all of our rankings for the episode. We have all of our bonus Star Note episodes, all free for people who follow the Patreon. For those that want to support the Patreon and be crew members, we do a deeper dive into the animated series. For Star Trek, we have all of our test recordings on there. Come check us out. And yeah, leave us a comment besides what you would rank, what you thought of the episode, just anything you like about the episode. And do you like this episode? Do you not like this episode? Did we get it right in our prediction? Did we get it wrong in our assessment? Let us know in the comments. Always fun to read comments from our listeners.
And be sure to share and review it.
Yes, please, wherever you're listening to this, share it with a friend and give us a review. Let us know what you think. It really helps with the metrics for the podcast and gets us out there. Besides our Patreon, you can follow us on x.com at Treks_Tangents. We're on Instagram and Blue Sky at Treks and Tangents. Jaci, where can people find you and what are you up to?
I am mostly on Instagram lately. Currently, I am uploading photos and videos from our state fair that just ended. And I'm getting ready to go in for my second hip replacement. So I'm working on that. But additionally, my Instagram handle is Jibboom, JIBBOOM. And on top of everything else that I have just said, I do makeup, I have advocacy for disabilities, and of course, dressing for your body.
All right. You can find me over on twitch.tv/Pirate Pound Town, where I stream a variety of video games. My video game content can also be found on YouTube at Pirate Pound Town. Some hobby coin collecting and other random content can be found on YouTube at Pirate Treasure Hunting. I'm socially on Blue Sky at Pirate Pound Town, and every once in a while I'm on Instagram at Pineapple Cannibal. Links to all social media mentioned can be found in the episode description. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this week's episode. We hope you had fun like we did, and we will see you all next week.
Tribble, tribble, tribble.
Next week, and transmission.